So, yeah, I prefer the legs hanging out because one of the problems is once the legs get in and get caught up, then it's a mess getting her out.
Yeah.
But when you like this, she's more relaxed. Her wings are also kind of tight, so she can't flutter around. So it's actually a pretty good sized bag for this. So I'll say a couple of things like what we do with the adults. The main thing I do is when I capture the adults, is my main goal is to leave them the way I found them. So that means when you capture them is making sure they don't fly first before I come and then after when we leave. So for me that's the most important thing, because if this owl flies out in the middle of the day, first of all, I may fly and get hit by a car, but then
by Merlin.
or crows or something can go in and eat the nestlings. So or she's incubating, which is the worst. Then the eggs, then it completely ruins her clutch, and they abandon much more at that stage. So that's like the main thing that I do. Then once you have the adult, so that means if I want to go to the nestlings and work on the nestlings with the adults there, I'll capture the adult, I'll put her in a bag, then I'll measure the nestlings, then or whatever, I'll put the nestlings back, then only at the very end I'll put the adult back. Because obviously you can't capture the nestlings and leave the adult in a box, because she'll be way more agitated that way. Not that she's enjoying this very much here. I'm not saying that, but she'll be more relaxed and less moving around. And I'm assuming less stressed also. So another thing which I always do when I work in the owls, like a lot of times you see many pictures of people holding owls, which this would be one of these days because we have lots of people. I typically don't like to do that anymore. So I keep them in the bags at all time. And even when I measure the beak, I just pull the beak out and try to cover her eyes up as much as possible. And actually the only time I really take the bag off the head is if you have to put a tag on, and at that point you have no choice because you have to put it over the head. But then once I put it over the head, I immediately put the bag on, because they seem to be way more relaxed. Which I have to say, these guys are a little bit more aggressive than the ones that we have, and they're bigger. But in general, though, so that's like my main thing, is trying to bother the least as possible. The other thing which I've spoken to these guys, which I think is important, once you have the adult, in particular if you're doing a master's, PhD, or whatever, I would spend an extra couple minutes and take an extra couple measurements, because the disturbance has been done. But in particular, if you want to learn something about it, I would take the opportunity to take an extra couple measurements, because who knows, like it doesn't matter what you're doing, GPS tags or whatever, it's an opportunity to do that. So I would always say it's better to go to less boxes and do more than go to more boxes and do less. In particular when it's a study with, if it's movement or diet or anything. Because, and I think a lot of times, because traditionally all this bird ringing was done by bird banders. And bird banders have a different motivation to put the ring on the bird. And then, so the motivation is quite different, whereas a researcher is more interested in many other questions. So a lot of times we learn from the bird ringers, but they don't necessarily work the way we would work if we worked with the species a long time and learned more. So I guess the idea was to ring them, or maybe not, and measure them, but we kind of don't have most of the equipment to do that. So maybe I'll just show. Do you guys want to ring them, or?
I don't think that was on the table today.
Yeah, I don't want to ring them because we don't.
You don't have a permit.
Well, we have our study site on Napa, which is the other side of these hills, and having one location here.
This box won't be part of Emily's work this year, so.
So, Motti, just a couple of questions before you. So, as far as aging goes, like with the adults, could you elaborate a little bit on what kind of?
So it's really difficult. But barn owl, the mode of barn owl is really complicated, much more than many other birds. So the way I age, which I learned from Alexander, and also the way I majorly learned is from ringing. That we ring so much that we have a large population, 40, 50, 60% of our recaptures. So those we know the age, and then the adults that we don't know the age become first year, like adults of that year. So like at least questions for age-related questions, the best is always a ring. And you know the age of the.
So you don't look at the serrated flange.
I do look, but those at least with us, they that only works for the or the very young fledglings it works, but then after, within a short time, once they grow that in, it's kind of hard to be sure if that really is true between the first, second. I don't think, I think actually that's probably related to other things, not age. That there's actually a paper about that with for combing pesticides, not pesticides, mites or something like that. So that's not so. So what I do is I always measure, like I measure at least one claw. This year I'll even measure tarsus, and even like some of the measurement, tarsus is like the hardest measurement to do. By the ringer methods, what I do is actually open a claw up, and I measure from here, from the base of here to there, which is not a real tarsus. From here to there I measure it. It's not a real tarsus from the base, like right here to there, with a caliper. But because I'm only comparing it to my own data, then it's fine. Because ultimately, you know, nobody does tarsus anyway. So I put it on a 90-degree angle and I measure from here, the base, to here. I pull it back a little bit. I can't show you because I don't have a caliper, but.
What's your outside point then? So you begin at the joint and then.
So I bit with the intersection right here. There's kind of a little hole.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't curl it. That's the ringers do that. That's way more. It's harder to do. But when you curl it, sometimes it doesn't like where the bump is.
No, I agree.
That's the real tarsus.
It's inaccurate. In some way, I always have to do two.
So I just open the claw up like this, and I measure from here to the base of right here because it's easier putting the base of caliper here. Exactly. But it's not a real tarsus, but it measures the length of. So that's like a great measurement. So in the females, you always one of the way you know if a female's a female, male's a male is, like I said, is a brood patch. So I always look at the brood patch. The tail, now that's another thing. There's many ways of measuring tails. What I actually do is I actually count the feathers, and I measure the 2 middle feathers. Only the 2 little middle feathers. That's what I do. Other people put the ruler in to the back, and measure like the whole thing. So typically what I do is after I measure the claw and the tarsus, I actually cover the legs up with a little small bag, which I have here, and then she moves around less. But you mentioned the uropygal gland. I've never seen one on these guys, which they have this the gland that is for the, what's that called?
Preening oil.
Preening oil, yeah.
Oh.
They don't. Which I would, but yeah, it's right here. I feel it. So, and then obviously the other measurements you do is the wing length. I do bill. I also do like I take the. I don't want to pull her out, but I measure even. I even measure like the breast, the spots and the color of the breast, because they all each have different color and different spots.
And it looks fat.
No, she's big. Yeah, she's heavy. We can wear her and stuff.
So this is our pretend GPS tag.
Wow.
We have other ones, so this is what they would look like.
You can pass that.
You can pass it around.
Just don't touch the antenna.
Oh yeah, you're not supposed to touch the antenna.
Yeah, and so this will be our pretend one. And so what we do, we create this harness out of Teflon ribbon, and we stitch some pieces onto some soft material. In this case, we use neoprene. And so the idea here is that this is going to rest on the sternum of the bird, and so it's soft and it won't be abrasive to their skin. And then the idea is that these will go over the shoulders and underneath the wing, and they'll connect to the unit in the back. And so this will rest on the back of the bird.
I can interject here just for a moment. So there's a number of ways to put on these transmitters. So we're going to demonstrate this one with this live owl. We're not actually going to put the real transmitter on, obviously. But then we also have some dead owls that people can practice with because they're pliable. And I know other people have used other techniques, and that'll be a great time to talk about some other attachment methods, Motti and Sophie and so on.
But we should, the carcasses would probably go to a different place to do that.
Yeah, not
no,
here.
I know. We'll put the. I want to. Yeah, we'll put the female back,
yeah,
and then we
you
can
get
move
away
away.
from her,
Yeah,
yeah.
that'd be.
Do you want to put the head on? Sure. So you can see her brood patch there.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Five nests. The other box that we went to that was empty only had 2 nestlings and 4 eggs.
Oh,
We practiced, it was good.
Are you Are you actually serious?
We're serious.
I could have.
Yeah.
I think that is
Real scientific.
Just-
Hold on, my That is very polished.
Yeah. So do you have to worry about any zoonoses then when you're like blowing all that dust and stuff into your partner's face?
I mean,
Just haunted.
Only if you didn't sign the form.
Oh yeah.
fire so good.
That's your answer.
I've never really thought about that.
you might.
Like after I spit on my fingers and touch it, I make sure to wash my hands after.
Oh yeah. Did someone's granny knit that hat especially for them, or did you buy it?
We bought it at just.
Oh.
We ran to the store to buy us something, and they had that.
So the units you guys choose to use, is there ever a time when like you can't put it on the male because the male's too light and fly both male and female universally?
Yeah. Did you hear that?
Yeah. And
We've
so
only
now,
tagged females so far, and we haven't really caught any that are too light with this tag.
Females usually have no string.
There's one under the one. This one.
Do they have to retrieve these? Matt, do you have to retrieve that?
So yeah, the question is with this tag, do you have to capture the tag to get the data back? With this particular model, you don't. There's a base station that we have that you can download the data from this remotely up to maybe, I don't know, I think they say 150 meters or something. We put the base station underneath the box. So when she comes back, we get all the data. We have, these are expensive, these are like $1,000. So I think we try to recapture the bird and get it back on. And then you can recharge it and put it on to another bird. So Xeronimo in this field season got data on it. I think it was 21 or 22 birds.
Oh.
With 10 tags. And then we still had 6 at the end. So we did.
You want to see some Nella in there?
So, I mean, I'll
Yeah.
send them. And
yeah. So the idea then here is that it's gonna. So these will get tied off. They'll get crimped.
they are relatively
What was that? Yeah.
What's the percentage?
And then we might apply a little bit of like super glue just to kind of
Yeah,
secure them on there.
2.5 is
And then we don't want it to be too tight, so we want it to move a little bit. And then we'll check to be sure that in the front that little pad is resting still on her sternum. And that's about it. Right?
I'll just add one thing. You know, it's very important when you add these tags on because the barn owl has to eat a gopher. But there's room that actually a gopher can fit in. If it's too tight, then you know.
Yeah, and that's why we ensure that it's on the sternum and that it doesn't slide up into the furcular hollow, which is just right there where they
You allow
store
a
fat.
finger
And,
in the sternum?
yeah,
You allow a finger
in the back.
in the back.
I mean, it's a little easier to, since we're working back here, to give the finger space.
Do you give about 1 finger space?
Yeah. Yeah.
Another important thing we always do is make sure with the wings.
Right.
That they're all, because sometimes you have feathers, obviously not sometimes, you always have feathers, and you have to make sure that it's under the feather.
Yeah, make sure on underside it's under the feather, and then here on the top there's a little notch, essentially kind of like the bend of the top of their wing, and you want it to sit right in that little notch. and then that won't obstruct any of their movement. And it'll rest like this, but you come back tomorrow, or the next day, and it's all hidden by the feathers. She kind of preens it in, and all you see is the little antenna sticking out.
And at the end of the season, you have to recapture and remove it.
Right. I mean, these are, so the pad in the front, it's sewed together just with cotton string, and so it will fall off eventually. But yeah.
But
Yeah.
it-
So
yeah,
if you
we
don't
attempt to
catch it,
retrieve
but
them
we
all.
attempt, yeah.
But if we don't, then it should come off.
Right.
Costs $1,000 or something.
So
Yes.
the 4 that you lost last year, was that because they fell off? Was that fatality?
That was birds not returning, or yeah, we just couldn't catch them.
They got too smart.
Yeah, or once the chicks get too old, then their female will spend very little time in the nest. So we're using a window of time when we're confident that she'll come back to the nest.
Yeah.
So again, that's that we talked earlier yesterday about some of the pros and cons of different tags. With this one being expensive and you want to retrieve it, then it limits. With the Atlas system.
I smell something.
But great,
Yeah.
but great data though.
Right.
That's cool.
That is just ridiculous. Really good at that.
You want to put her back?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think we should put it back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel bad for it.
Yeah,
5.
5, okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty good for size, that size with those big birds.
Oh, yeah.
And
They're
in
not
that
that
one
large,
where
though.
we're
Probably won't survive.
it's hilly, and so this orchard style
Orchard ladder, yeah.
ladder is way easier than any kind of four-legged
A
thing.
lot more predictable.
You tied it. Do you want me to throw the while you're I think it'd be really interesting if we found any of Carrie's banded
This was things we found in the truck.
But you mean like wildcat?
No, I'm just saying, just in general, like I'm thinking, in a place where there were, I mean, I guess there's no way.